Okay, so throughout our story, we had some elaborated noun phrases. So an elaborated noun phrase that we saw in the story was worst behaved class. That is describing our noun of the class. So worst behaved class is our elaborated noun phrase. Another elaborated noun phrase we saw was the whole school, or maybe even a sweet voice. Another elaborated noun phrase would be the next morning, an unpleasant voice, an ugly black dress, a real witch, angry butterflies, my little secret, a little song, and the next morning. These are all elaborated noun phrases because they elaborate and describe more about the noun. Also, a linguistic verb is talking verbs. So those are verbs such as exclaimed, whispered, and cried. And those are all linguistic verbs that we heard in the story. Right?
Yeah.
And what's another linguistic verb? If I said it was a talking verb, what could another one be?
Screamed.
Okay, good. And we had some adverbs in the story. So our adverb in the story was when, and we also had some coordinating conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions combine two things together. So we had the word and but, and as coordinating conjunctions. Okay, now I'm just going to have you answer some questions. Who was the main character in the story?
Miss Nelson.
What other characters were in the story?
Miss Viola Swamp, the kids, and Detective McSwong.
Detective McSmog. But yeah,
McSmog.
good job. I got what you meant. Where did the story take place?
In a classroom.
Where else did the students go in the story?
Miss Nelson house and police station.
Yeah, good. Okay. So how was Miss Swamp different from Miss Nelson?
Miss Swamp very mean, and Miss Nelson's sweet.
Okay, so do you think they were the same or were they different?
Completely different.
Yeah, so totally opposite, right?
Yep.
What was the takeoff in the story?
Miss Nelson went missing.
Yeah. And why did she leave?
Because her students were misbehaving.
So yeah, Miss Nelson left because the students were misbehaving, right? Why did the children want to get Miss Nelson back?
Because Miss Viola Swamp was mean.
And Miss Viola Swamp made them work, right? So the children wanted to get Miss Nelson back because Miss Viola Swamp was mean. What did the children think had happened to Miss Nelson?
Gobbled by a shark, maybe went to Mars, carried off by an angry butterflies.
Angry butterfly, yeah. So did any of those things really happen to Miss Nelson?
No.
How do you know none of these things happened to Miss Nelson?
Because she could have gotten eaten by a shark. It is very unlikely, but while she could go to Mars, she needs special training and probably would be an astronaut if that were likely, and the butterflies don't fly off with cars.
Right, so those things are just all pretty unlikely or unrealistic, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So why do you think the author had the children in the story imagine these crazy things about where Miss Nelson was?
Because they're kids and they have a big imagination.
Yeah, good. I like that answer. What did the children do to try and find Miss Nelson?
They went to the police station, got the detective, looked at her house.
Yeah, okay, good. Was Detective McSmog very helpful in finding Miss Nelson?
No.
And why do you say that?
All he did was say she's missing.
So she just didn't really help. He didn't really help.
Yeah.
How did the children feel when they couldn't find Miss Nelson?
Discouraged.
Yeah. And how did the children act when Miss Nelson came back?
They stopped being rude and silly.
Yeah, so they were nice to Miss Nelson, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think the children improved their behavior when Miss Nelson came back?
Because they don't want Miss Nelson to leave again.
Yeah, the children were nice because they didn't want Miss Nelson to leave again. Why did the children want to have Miss Nelson as their teacher rather than Miss Swamp?
Because Miss Swamp was mean and loaded them up with homework.
Yeah, the children wanted Miss Nelson as their teacher instead of Miss Swamp because Miss Swamp was mean and loaded them up with homework, and Miss Nelson was nice. Good. How do you think the kids felt at the end of the story?
Happy.
Yeah. Why do you think they were happy at the end?
Because they got their nice teacher back.
Yep, the kids were happy because they had their nice teacher back. How do you know Miss Nelson was actually Viola Swamp?
The black dress in her closet.
Yeah, good job.